I have a large collection of arcade games. I wonder how much money it would cost me to complete all of them if it was a real arcade. Only one way to find out. Michael Jackson, the king of pop and musical icon riddled with controversy. Regardless as to what you thought of him, what he achieved during his career and left behind after his death made a massive impact on the world. While mainly performing as a musical artist, Michael would dabble in film roles. From bit parts as Razzmatazz in Bugsy Malone, supporting roles as the Scarecrow in The Wiz, and main roles as Captain EO in, well, Captain EO. Michael sometimes starred in films to accompany some of his songs, Thriller and Moonwalker being two of his most famous. Moonwalker, however, would go a step further, and spawn a game out of it which would take multiple forms on multiple consoles, including an arcade title of the same name. The Sega arcade game is an isometric shooter where up to 3 players can take control of a Michael Jackson to rescue the kidnapped children as you fight your enemies using the power of pizzazz, dance, and weapons of mass destruction. Let's just get this out the way. This game is weird, but enjoyably weird. Let me show you why. The levels are referred to as rounds, and each round, except for round 1, has 3 stages to them. In round 1, you'll experience every mechanic possible in under a minute. So let's start with the controls. The game uses a 2-button and stick layout. Using the stick lets you move in any direction. One button will allow you to perform a weak melee attack, tase your enemies using force lightning, or holding it charges up your attack which shoots further than your regular one. The second button makes Michael and enemies alike burst into dance. It acts as a flashy full screen attack, and the attack instantly kills if not highly damages the enemy. Further down the level you'll start to see children and Bubbles the monkey. Walking to a child saves them, and sometimes the kids will give Michael either health or a pair of legs to do dance moves with in return. Saving Bubbles, however, will... just watch. Somehow, I have no idea how, but somehow a monkey gives Michael the power to go into full Autobot mode. In this mode, Michael is more powerful, his attacks have max range and increased damage. And that's everything you need to know about the game's mechanics and controls. A nice short level to introduce how everything works without tutorial text. I'm not joking when I say short. This level took less than 2 minutes to complete, and before we knew it, we were on to round 2. Each level starts with a few comic panels to loosely portray the plot of the film, with the occasional "Ow!" from Michael. A brief view of the levels lets you know where the kidnapped children are. Not that it matters because they aren't hard to miss and the level won't advance until you save them. As much as I don't want to because I hate kids. From here on out, the levels get longer and crazier. Enemies start looking weirder, almost out of place, and in this level you get to visit the nightclub from the film. Even though the levels are longer and broken up into stages, they become more intense, almost like a bullet hell game, but not as intense as one. The amount of enemies on screen can really make things feel cramped, and to not get hit is virtually impossible, smooth criminal or not. In some instances, the environment around you can change, making it even more cramped and claustrophobic. You hardly get a chance to move, let alone breathe, and if any moment looks quiet, it won't stay that way for long. You're not even safe among fellow musicians. Why do you betray us? We are brothers in musical arms. From here onwards, at the end of every level, you'll fight a boss to finish the level. The first boss, or rather bosses, are 2 riot bots that shoot fireballs as they try and ram you. Not the hardest boss, but its constant drifting makes it tricky to hit. They'll attack you one after the other with no change in their tactics. Like I said, it's not the hardest, but it's only the first boss. Round 3. This level might as well be based on a Terminator movie, as most of the enemies are robots. Enemy variety of the game is very large visually. Mechanically though, they don't vary much. Some will try to shoot you, some will try to punch you, and some have... other intentions? Really the only difference between these enemies outside of looks is either how much damage they take, or how they attack. Their main method of intimidating you is their massive numbers and how they are constantly able to launch surprise attacks as they spawn in, whether it be driving into the levels, leaping out of alleyways, or moving the environment to protect themselves. Most of the enemies move at the same speed too. With such little difference in the enemies, the combat can feel a little stale, but the game as a whole is very short, and it's not too much of an issue as the game will end before it gets boring. Bosses, however, are a different experience. They apply tactics and attacks that regular enemies don't. Level 3's boss is Mr. Big in a floating robot that has 2 phases. Phase 1 is a wall of turrets that will block damage to him while firing back at you as they change formation. Once they're destroyed, Mr. Big will periodically shoot at you. So far, the bosses have felt underpowered. They're not a pushover and any mistake could cost you, but they aren't a massive challenge either. Watch the Mr. Big fight uncut and you'll see what I mean. See? That didn't take so long. Granted, we had the robot power-up and dances, but you're given a robot power-up before every boss, and you get a free dance every time you spawn back in. And as a result, the boss felt very quick. Round 4, Graveyard. Oh, I wonder if we're going to see a Thriller. Oh, actually we don't. I don't know if I'm disappointed or not that there's no Thriller dance here. Thriller isn't even the music of the level. No doubt by now you will have noticed that the soundtrack is composed of Michael Jackson's songs, and they sound great. The music is probably the most popular part of the Moonwalker games. They are recognisable and masterfully recreated in a 16-bit music style. Some of the music is original as well, like the boss musics. Sound, however, isn't as impressive. A few grunts, explosions, and a pleasure groan when Michael dies. All very loud. So loud that they drown out the music. Even regular speech sounds weird.
I love you, Michael.
It's clear where the thought and effort went for the overall sound design, but I think more effort could have been put into them. The boss of this level is the most strange yet. 3 ramming machines that shoot ghosts. Why do all of these machines that Mr. Big uses look like something out of the early Sonic games? Oh yeah. Now the bosses are getting harder. This one takes an absolute beating even with 2 robots shooting it, and the ghosts it fires at you will chase you whether they hit you or not. The difficulty in this one comes from being swarmed constantly. You might die a few times here, but at least the bosses are picking up in strength. Could be too little too late though, as the next level is the final round. The final level is the longest of all the levels. As you expect, all enemies you've encountered up to here make an appearance and coming out in full force. I just wanted to watch them all dance. The graphics are pretty decent. The backgrounds look on the better side of average in some places, but other times look pretty good. The character models, however, got more focus. The enemies are detailed and a respectable amount of thought was put into the designs of them all, but of course, most of the effort went into the star of the show. The graphics on Michael are astounding. They did a good job capturing his likeness in the comic panels, the way he moves and the dance sequences look amazing. He does stand out while dancing, with the enemies only having a few frames of animation, while Michael has much more. But I think that was intentional. It's also a nice touch that almost every enemy gets their own dance moves, even the poppers. Stage 1 of this level takes place in a level that looks like the first. Stage 2, however, takes place in the only animated background part of the level as you defend yourself from hordes of enemies on a lift, though it did bug out a little for us. As we ascend to the top of the lift, holding hands, we encountered Mr. Big in his final robotic-like machine. A few turrets try to get some cheap shots on you before he comes on screen, and you can tell he's the bad guy because he is stone-faced in the moment of dance. Unfortunately, he's not as dangerous as the previous bosses. He still needs some effort to put in to beat him, but he has one glaring weakness. His only method of attack is to shoot missiles along the ground. However, The position of his guns means there are plenty of safe spaces and blind spots to stand in as you shoot back at him. Because of this, he might hurt you a bit or maybe kill you once or twice, but if you focus, you can defeat this boss easily without being touched. Which is a disappointment. At the end of the game, you want something that tests you and all the skills you developed up to that point. Sadly though, you don't get that here. This boss feels like it should have been stage 2, 3 at most. On the plus side though, you do turn into a spaceship when you defeat him. With Mr. Big defeated, he blows up in his base and Spaceship Michael strikes a pose as the credits roll. Michael looks like he's about to crash. Michael Jackson's Moonwalker is a unique experience with an equally unique charm. It's simple, chaotic and overall enjoyable. It's not got much replay value and it might get a little stale quick, and the bosses vary in quality going up and down as the game goes on, but you will have a fun time from start to finish with all the dancing, mad fights, recognisable music, Iron Man suits, and the co-op makes the experience tons better. If you're looking for something that's just a laugh rather than something you might want to finish, then this is definitely something you can try. And also, if you have played this but want to experience it differently, there are the console versions you can try. And that was Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. Thanks for watching everyone. Join me next time where I'll be winning a war using nothing but a hovercraft and a big ass gun.